Wyoming Territory, July 1879. The first time Yates Foster brought milk to the old homestead up on Cinder Ridge, he figured he was doing a simple favor for a neighbor. But the moment the door opened and he saw her, Zadie Thompson, tall and pale with dark hair pinned in a crooked knot and a shotgun resting loose in her grip, he knew nothing about his days would stay simple for long. "I do not need charity," she said, not unkindly, but not soft either. Yates held the milk jug steady between both hands. "A cow gives what it gives, ma'am. Just figured it ought to be used." Her eyes flicked to the milk, then to the two small faces peeking from behind her skirt. A boy and a girl, both barefoot, both thin. The boy looked about 8, the girl maybe 6. Both stared at him like he was something strange. "I will take it," she said after a beat. "Thank you." He handed it over. The children disappeared back inside like rabbits into a burrow, and Zadie closed the door with a quiet nod. Yates stood there a moment longer than he meant to, then turned and walked back down the dirt path to his horse. He did not know her story yet. But he would. Zadie had been on the ridge almost a month. Folks in town said she came from Missouri, widowed, though no one knew the name of the man she married. She kept to herself, worked the land alone, and had 2 children no one claimed. Some whispered the kids were not hers. Some said she was hiding from someone. But Yates did not care for gossip. He cared for what he saw with his own eyes, and what he saw was a woman doing her best to survive in a place that did not forgive weakness. The next morning, he brought another jug of milk. This time, she opened the door before he knocked. "You again," she said. "Me again." She half smiled, just a twitch at the corner of her mouth. "You bring this every morning?" "If you want me to." She took the jug, their fingers brushed, and she did not pull away as fast this time. "The children like it." "What are their names?" "Bethany and Boone," she said. "They are my sisters. She left them with me 2 winters ago. Never came back." Yates nodded. "You are raising them alone?" "I am all they have." He tipped his hat. "Then I will see you tomorrow." By the 7th morning, the girl Bethany had started meeting him at the edge of the porch. She would take the jug with both hands and give him a shy, gap-toothed smile. Boone stayed behind the door, eyes wary, always watching. Zadie started offering him coffee. He never stayed long, just enough to sip a few mouthfuls on the top step. She would sit beside him, quiet mostly, but not cold. Her hands were rough like his, her sleeves rolled to the elbows, dirt beneath her nails. She had the look of someone who had worked since the day she could walk. "You do not talk much," she said once, handing him a tin cup. "I like to listen." "To what?" "To you. The wind. The quiet." She looked at him for a moment, something soft flickering behind her eyes. "I forgot what quiet felt like." One morning, he found the porch empty. No Bethany, no Zadie. He called out once, twice. No answer. Then he heard the sharp bark of a child's cry from behind the barn. He dropped the milk jug and ran. He found them in the tall grass. Boone on the ground, his small face twisted in pain, and Zadie crouched beside him, her dress stained with blood at the hem. "A snake," she said, voice tight. "He stepped on it. It bit him." Yates knelt, saw the swelling on the boy's leg. "He needs help fast." "I have nothing," she whispered, panic creeping into her voice for the first time he had ever heard. "I do not know what to do." Yates did not hesitate. He picked Boone up in his arms. "I will ride. Hold on." He mounted his horse with the boy pressed close, and Zadie ran beside him as far as she could before she fell behind. The doctor in town saved Boone's leg. Barely. He said another hour and the boy might not have made it. Yates stayed the whole night at the clinic, sitting on the floor beside the cot while Boone slept fitfully. Zadie came at dawn, her face drawn, her hair uncombed. She looked at Yates like he had put the stars back in the sky. "You saved him," she said. "I just got him here." "No," she said, her voice breaking. "I could not move. I froze. You did not. You saved him. She stepped forward and took his hand in hers. It was the first time she had touched him without a reason. I do not know how to thank you. You do not have to. She held his gaze. I want to. After Boone healed, Yates kept coming. Every morning. With milk. With quiet conversation. With small things, nails for the barn door, a new kettle, a pair of gloves for Bethany. And every morning, Zadie opened the door a little easier. Let her guard drop a little more. One morning, she stepped outside before he reached the porch. She had a linen cloth in her hands. I made biscuits, she said. They are warm. He took one, bit into it. Best thing I have tasted in years. She smiled, real this time. Full and bright. It changed her whole face. You are the reason I keep coming back, he said, steady as ever. Her cheeks turned pink. Is that so? He nodded. If it were just about the milk, I would have stopped weeks ago. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she leaned in and kissed him. Quiet, sure, no hesitation. Bethany giggled behind the window. Boone rolled his eyes. Zadie did not pull away. She just rested her forehead against his. I am glad you came back. 3 weeks passed. The firewood stack behind Zadie's cabin, once sparse and crooked, rose into tidy rows. A new latch held the henhouse door straight. A narrow trench curved away from the well, dug by Yates's steady hands, guiding runoff where it needed to go. He never asked permission for any of it. He just saw what wasn't right and made it so. One gray morning, Zadie met him beside the fence rail instead of the porch. The wind carried the scent of wet soil, and her skirt hem was damp with dew. Boone wants a knife, she said straight off. Yates leaned against the fence, reins looped loosely around his wrist. How old you reckon a boy ought to be before he earns one? Old enough to keep it pointed away from his sister, she said, arms folded. He's been whittling sticks with a rock, and he's taken to shaping traps out of saplings. Caught a quail yesterday. Didn't tell me till after it was cooked. Yates looked off toward the ridge, where low clouds curled around the treetops. Sounds like he's trying to prove something. He's trying to be a man. She picked at a frayed thread on her sleeve. I just don't want him rushing toward it too fast. You teach him right, he won't have to rush. He'll grow into it. Zadie brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. You sound sure. I had a father who made me earn every inch of manhood. Didn't hand me a blade till I could sharpen it without cutting myself. She smiled, faint and sideways. And did you? Second try. She laughed, not a small laugh either, but a full-bodied one, surprised out of her. She covered her mouth like she wasn't used to the sound of it. Yates caught her eye and held it. I'll bring him a proper blade, he said. One with a dull edge to start. She nodded. Thank you. He looked down at her fingers, rough from work, cracked at the knuckles. You ought to wear gloves when you dig. I did, she said. They wore through. He took something from his saddlebag and held it out, leather gloves, soft and mended at the seams. Her brow furrowed. You don't have to keep bringing things. I know. She took them, slow. Her thumb ran over the stitching. I don't know what to do with someone who sees what I need before I say it. You don't have to do anything, he said. Just let me. She stared at him, something shifting in her eyes. You ever been married? No, why not? He leaned forward, elbows on the top rail. Spent too long believing no one'd want a man who couldn't stay put. You're staying now. I am. She held his gaze for a long moment. Then her voice dropped low. I keep waiting for the world to take back what it gives. It won't, he said. Not this time. That evening he returned after supper, this time with a small box wrapped in cloth. Boone opened it on the porch steps, wide-eyed at the wooden-handled blade nestled inside. Yates knelt beside him. Grip it like this, he said, guiding the boy's fingers. And always mind where the edge points. Boone listened, serious as a man twice his age. Bethany sat nearby, stringing yellow flowers into a crooked chain. Zadie stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching. When their eyes met, hers softened, and she stepped down into the dusk. "You could have just dropped it off," she said. "I wanted to see him hold it." She hooked her arm through his. "Stay for coffee?" He looked toward the horizon, where the last of the lights slipped behind the hills. "Only if I can fetch the water." They walked to the well in silence. No need for words. Their shadows stretched long behind them, side by side. By late August, the garden behind the cabin began to yield. Zadie had coaxed beans up the trellis and squash from under the broad leaves near the fence. The children took to their chores without pushing now, and Yates, without ever saying so aloud, had folded himself into the rhythm of that place. One afternoon, with the sun edging westward and a dry hush over the land, Zadie stood over the washtub, wringing out a sheet. Yates approached from the barn, sleeves rolled and palms dusty. "You ever think about building a smokehouse?" he asked, wiping his hands on his trousers. She glanced at him over her shoulder. "I've thought of it. Just haven't had time to make it more than a thought." He squatted beside the water bucket, dipping a ladle and drinking slow. "If we set the frame before frost, it'd keep me through winter." She folded a pillowcase and laid it flat across her arm. "You say we now?" "I reckon I do." Her eyes lingered on him. "Feels like you've always been here." "I haven't." "I know. But it feels that way." He looked down at the dust clinging to his boots, then back up. "I don't want to be anywhere else." From the edge of the yard, Bethany called out, cradling a jar of wild plums. "Ma, can I use these for the pie?" Zadie nodded without turning. Once the girl disappeared into the house, she returned her gaze to Yates. "She started calling me that last week. Just came out of her mouth one morning. I didn't correct her. You shouldn't. I didn't earn it. You're the one she runs to when she's hurt. The one she asks about plums? That's earned." Zadie let the wind pull damp strands of hair from her braid. "Boone's been sleeping through the night again." "Good." She reached for the next wet sheet and paused. "He asked if you'd stay for his birthday." Yates stood, brushing off his knees. "When is it?" "September 3rd. I'll be here." She wrung the sheets slowly this time, then turned to face him. "I know you don't say things unless you mean them." He met her eyes. "That true of you too?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes." "Then let me ask something." "All right." He stepped closer, voice low. "Would you want me here? Beyond birthdays?" Zadie didn't answer at once. She laid the sheet over the line, smoothing the corners with care. Then she turned and lifted her hands, still damp, still smelling of lye and sunlight, and placed them against his chest. "I've been waiting for the world to steal something from me again. But you keep showing me it might not." "Then let it have this," he said. "Let it give, not take." Boone's voice broke from the porch. "There's a coyote out past the fence." Zadie dropped her hands. Yates turned toward the sound, already moving. Together, they followed the boy's call, their boots pressing side by side through the brittle grass. September 3rd rose with a stillness that held the edge of autumn in its grip. The air had cooled overnight, and a hush settled over the ridge as if the land itself was listening for something. Zadie stood at the table, folding the last of the cloth napkins she'd stitched from flour sacks, her fingers moving slow and deliberate. Boone sat cross-legged near the hearth, carving lines into a scrap of pine with his new knife, careful, measured strokes, just as Yates had taught him. Bethany plucked dried corn husks from a basket, arranging them into a crude doll. "Do you think he'll bring the fiddle?" she asked, not looking up. Zadie turned toward the window. "He didn't say. But maybe." The girl's voice was light, hopeful. Outside, the yard had been swept and a rough plank table dragged from the barn. It leaned slightly to the east, but Zadie had covered it with a checkered quilt and set out a tin pail of wild asters. That morning, Boone had tucked a single feather behind his ear and declared himself man enough, though Zadie had caught the tremble in his hands when he tied the string around his parcel of jerky to share. The sound of hooves on packed dirt reached the porch before the figure did. Boone was on his feet in an instant, Bethany just behind. Zadie didn't follow. She stayed at the window, watching. Yates dismounted slow, carrying something wrapped in oilcloth. He looked toward the house, then crouched to let Boone run his fingers along the saddle strap of his horse, murmuring something Zadie couldn't hear. Bethany clung to the hem of his coat. He let her. When he finally stepped up to the porch, he met Zadie's eyes through the screen door before speaking. "Happy birthday, Boone," he said without breaking that gaze. "Thought we might do a little music, if it's welcome." Zadie opened the door. "It is." Later, after the sun dipped low and the beans had been scraped from the pot, Boone sat on the porch rail, legs swinging, while Bethany leaned against Yates's side, half asleep. The fiddle rested across his lap, its strings still humming faintly from the last tune. Zadie sat on the step just below him, her knees drawn up, arms resting across them. She looked toward the trees, where the shadows had grown long. "You always play near the end," she said. He ran a thumb along the bough, thoughtful. "Never like starting things with noise. You played Red River Valley. I haven't heard that since I was a girl. My mother used to hum it while she sewed." Zadie looked up. "You've never mentioned her. There's still things to tell." He shifted, careful not to wake Bethany. "She died before I left home. Tuberculosis, the kind that doesn't give much warning. My father wasn't the same after." She nodded, quiet for a moment. "My sister left me the children and a note. That was all. I don't know if she meant to come back." I stopped wondering. He glanced toward Boone, who now dozed against the porch post, knife tucked beneath his shirt. "You've made them a place. That matters more." Zadie reached down and traced a knot in the porch wood. "Sometimes I still feel like I'm pretending." "You're not. You're raising them." She looked up again, her voice low. "Do you want children, Yates?" He didn't answer right away. "Then, I think I already care about two." Her breath caught just once, but she didn't speak. He leaned forward, just far enough that his shoulder brushed hers. "You asked once why I never married?" Zadie let her hair fall forward, shielding her face. "I remember. I never saw a life I wanted to stay for. Until now." She turned to him fully then, her face open, unguarded. "I've been waiting to feel safe again. Not just for me, for them, too. You feel that now?" "I do." He reached for her hand, rough against his palm, and she let him take it. Inside, the hearth still glowed with the last of the fire. The night stretched wide and quiet around them, broken only by the wind through the cottonwoods. When Zadie rose at last, she didn't go inside alone. She led him by the hand, slow, certain, as Boone and Bethany slept soundly behind the door. By the time the first frost kissed the ridge, the land had dulled into shades of copper and smoke. The garden had been cleared, the last of the beans hung to dry on strings across the porch, and the children's voices had grown quieter with the shifting season. The days shortened, but inside the cabin, the light lingered longer than it used to. Zadie folded a wool blanket over the foot of the bed while Yates mended the latch on the root cellar trap door. The steady scrape of his knife against the wood echoed faintly through the floorboards. "I spoke to Mr. Denslow in town," she said, smoothing the edge of the blanket. "He's willing to take 24 jars of my preserves come spring. Said his wife is partial to plum." Yates's voice rose from beneath the floor. "You thinking of trading regular? If I can keep the pantry full enough." She paused. "I'd like to earn something of my own." He climbed up, wiping his hands on a rag, and crossed the room. "You already built something from nothing. This place, these children, that counts for more than coin." "I know it does," she said, turning to face him. "But there's a kind of pride in watching something you made sit on a stranger's shelf." He nodded. "Then I'll help you build more shelves." She leaned her hip against the bedpost. I want to put up a proper fence next year. One that won't lean come thaw. I can get timber from the South Grove, he said. We'll haul it in before the ground goes too hard. Her eyes searched his face. You always say we now. I mean it. She stepped closer, her voice softer. And if I said I want you to stay not just through the winter, or for the chores, or for the children, but as mine? Yates didn't hesitate. Then I'd say I already do. The wind tapped at the windows, dry leaves skittering across the porch. He reached for her hand and held it between both of his, warm and calloused. I want to marry you, Zadie, he said. Not for duty, not for shelter. For you. Because I know what it is to wake and want nothing more than to stay beside you. That's never happened to me before. Her breath caught, but she didn't look away. I don't have lace. There's no preacher in town just now. I can't offer a church or a dress or a ring. We got land, sky, fire, and 2 children who already think of me as theirs. That's more than most start with. She nodded once, and the stillness between them deepened into something whole. I want that, she said. Today. Here. They stepped outside, boots crunching over the brittle grass. Boone stood near the barn, sharpening a stick, and Bethany was drawing a crooked heart into the dirt with her toe. Zadie knelt beside them. We're going to say vows, she said. Me and Yates. Right here. Bethany blinked. Like married? Exactly like that. Boone's mouth twitched into something solemn. Do I have to say anything? No, Yates said. Just stand with us. They did. The 4 of them. Under the stubbled sky, with the wind humming low through the trees. Zadie took his hands. I vow to build this life with you. Not just the land, but the quiet in it. The steadiness. Yates answered, steady and sure. I vow to carry what's heavy, to hold what's fragile, and to stay, always, through every season. Bethany clapped once. Boone nodded like it was done. They didn't kiss, not right away. They just stood there, hands clasped, the ridge quiet around them. Then, after a long pause, Zadie leaned in, and he met her halfway. It wasn't rushed or loud. Just true. That night they sat by the fire with the children curled in quilts beside them. Zadie laid her head against Yates's shoulder, while he rubbed slow circles into the back of her hand with his thumb. No words passed between them. They didn't need any. Years later, the fence still stood straight at the edge of the field, and the smokehouse behind the barn cured meat through every winter. Bethany grew tall and sharp-eyed, her hands skilled at stitching and her feet always bare until the first frost. Boone took to trapping with a quiet focus, his traps clever and kind, never wasteful. Folks in town came to know Zadie's preserves by the paper wrapping she tied with red string. They came to know Yates by the way he never raised his voice, but always got things done. The land stayed hard, and sometimes the seasons ran lean, but there was always enough. Enough warmth. Enough love. Enough of a life built slow and honest. And every night, when the fire died low and the wind curled around the eaves, Zadie and Yates lay side by side, her hand resting over his heart like it had always belonged there. Because it had.